Welcome to our video lesson on density, and in this video we're going to use the density of a substance to calculate either its mass or its volume. So last class you started looking at how to calculate the density, and when you were calculating the density I asked you to write down 3 things every single time. The first is what you know. So we're always going to write D equals, M equals, and V equals. So we're going to see if we can find the density, the mass, and the volume. Let's start by reading our question. So our question says a diamond has a density of 3 51/100ths. Sorry, there's a typo here, it's grams, not GM. So it's grams per centimeters cubed. And a mass of 4.62 grams. And we need to calculate its volume. So we're going to start by filling in the 3 things we know. We know its density. It has a density of 3.51 or 3 51/100ths grams per centimeters cubed. We also know its mass, and its mass is 4 62/100ths of a gram. One nice thing about this question that you should watch out for is our units. Notice that our density is in grams per centimeters cubed, and our mass is also measured in grams. So that's a great place to start. The next thing we are going to try and calculate for our volume, so I'm going to put a question mark there. The next thing I always need you to do is to start by writing our formula. Now on your sheet at the top, the formula is written in this nice little triangle. And we've got mass up here, and density, and then volume. So the cool thing about this triangle is whatever the value you're trying to solve for is the one you're going to cover up. So in this situation, I put my thumb over the volume, or if we just kind of black out this volume here and ignore it, it'll give us the equation for it. So in this case, it tells us that volume is equal to the mass divided by the density. The next thing we're going to do is, so that's writing our equation, then we need to substitute our values in, and I'm going to ask you to include the units. So we'll put 3.51 grams per centimeters cubed divided by 4.62 grams. So then I grab my calculator and I do this calculation. So 3.51 divided by 4.62. It gives me a really, really long decimal. For this, you're going to round to 2 decimal places, so to the hundredths place, unless there's a situation where it doesn't make sense. So you have 0.000 and then a number, then you need to go until we have a digit so that you can write an answer that makes sense. So in this case, I have 0.75974, and it continues. What I would write is 0.76. The last thing to think about is what units are my volume going to be measured in. And that's why I asked you to write your units in your equation, because if we look here, our grams have canceled each other out, so we're left with centimeters cubed. So that means that my volume must be 0.76 or 76/100ths centimeters cubed. So the next substance we're looking at is a substance that's near and dear to my heart. It's maple syrup. And we know that maple syrup has a density of 1 37/100ths of a gram per milliliter. You have 1 liter of syrup, and your challenge is to find its mass. So again, we're going to start by writing out what we know. I want to find the density, volume, and mass. So we know the density is 1 37/100ths of a gram per milliliter, and that the volume we have is 1 liter. Our challenge is to try and find the mass. We need to look at the units here. Our density is grams per milliliter, but our volume is in liters. We need to make sure we have the same units on both. So we have milliliters in our density and liters in our volume. the easiest thing is to convert from liters into milliliters for our volume. Now, because milliliters is milli as our prefix, we know that there's 1,000 milliliters in a liter. So 1 liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters. Our next thing is to write out our equations. So we're trying to solve for mass this time. So if I have my little nice handy dandy triangle, I am trying to solve for mass. So I'm going to block out mass. It means mass is equal to density times volume. You can put the times sign or the little dot. I know that because they're beside each other, they're not one on top of the other, which would show me division. My next step is to substitute them in. So my density is 1.37 grams per milliliter. And my volume is 1,000 milliliters. So now I'm going to multiply them. In this situation, I hopefully don't need to use my calculator, because I see it's 1,000, I know that I'm going to move my decimal place over 3 times to the right. If you need to use your calculator, that's just fine. And you can type it in and you'll get the same answer. So I've got grams per milliliter times milliliters. So that means that my milliliters are going to cancel out and I'm just left with grams. So my answer is 1,370 grams. If I wanted to convert that into kilograms, I could. Because it's how many grams are in a kilogram, it's like how many meters are in a kilometer. There's 1,000 meters in a kilometer, so there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram, so this would be equal to 1.37. I've divided by 1,000 and moved this over 3 times, kilograms. That's all for our lesson on density. The maple syrup, 1 liter of maple syrup must weigh 1.37 kilograms. So if you're looking to mail it somewhere, that's something to keep in mind. That's all for now. I'll talk to you later.